Hey you guys, welcome to the shed. Super excited about today's project. Let's get started.
One, two, three.
So one of the things that we made from our scrapwood pile this year was these wood mittens. And they're cute enough, just rustic, but y'all know I'm going to want to decoupage these. So I start by painting them out in a bright color before decoupaging. When you paint a white background, it really does make a big difference in how much of your image that you see. It's important with papers that have lighter backgrounds, certainly, but even if you have a dark paper, and it has white highlights or white details in it, that light background is still going to make a big difference in how much of the artwork is actually visible once you finish your project. This is the Roycycled Christmas Masterboard Decoupage paper. This is one of my personal favorites. I love masterboards because there are just so many opportunities to create within one sheet, whether you're working on small projects or larger projects. Once I dry fit my piece and decide how I want it to sit on my mitten, I can start decoupaging. I'm misting my paper with just water and then taking a few minutes and gently stretching it. This way I won't have any wrinkles because once I start decoupaging, my paper will already be stretched and it won't respond to my decoupage medium. I'm going to take a few minutes and do an anchor row, but this is a relatively small surface, so I'll be able to do the rest of the mitten with just one more section. Making sure that my paper is adhered to my surface, I can go ahead and seal this before setting it aside to let it dry. I like trimming my paper once it's dry because I feel like I get a much cleaner trim that way. This is another piece from the same piece of paper, and I'm going to repeat the same process to decoupage this mitten. I wanted my mittens to go together, but I didn't want them to be matchy. So I think that these two pieces complement each other beautifully and they'll look really pretty side by side. Just a little pop of red against the rustic mittens is going to be so pretty. I'm using an emery board from Dollar Tree to trim these. I love these emery boards because they enable me to get in really tight spots when I'm trimming. And this emery boards are about like an 80 grit. They're pretty rough. And so when I'm working on a rustic piece like this that has a lot of texture, this is perfect for trimming. Around the thumb of the mitten, I can have a little bit of tension on the paper, and rather than risk tearing it, I just snip it really quickly with my fussy cutting scissors. Now this area at the top, I want to be super careful when I'm trimming this. A lot of times your decoupage medium will settle into crevices like this, and even if the rest of your paper feels dry, there may be moisture here at the top. If you want to get a nice clean trim on your decoupage in areas like this, you want to make sure that it's completely dry, and B, don't be like me using your scissors. Make sure you're using a nice sharp blade so that you get a nice clean trim. I'm a hot mess, y'all. Don't do what I do. Do what I say do. You'll have best results. Now that I have these all decoupaged, I'm going to go ahead and trim and seal them and just go around my edges and make sure everything is tacked down really well. I thought it would be so cute, you guys, if we added some texture on the top of our mittens. Like in my imagination, I can think of super cute knitted mittens and how they used to have the patterns on them. So I am just mixing up some salt wash and paint, roughly 50-50. I want my mixture to be the consistency of like drop biscuits. Once I get this mixed thoroughly, I'm going to just spread it over the top of my mitten. You guys see there, I'm gonna spread it about, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch thick. You want it thick enough because we're actually gonna use a stamp to imprint a texture onto our mittens. I'm using the Iron Orchid Design stamp for this piece. Look in the comments for which stamp it is, you guys, because I do not remember right now, but I'll make sure and put it in the description below. But I'm going to go ahead and spread this mixture onto both of my mittens. I'm going to use my craft dryer to dry them just a little bit. My goal is not to dry it completely, but I really just want to form a crust over the top of my mixture, and I want it to be soft just underneath so that I can get a nice clean impression and it won't stick to my stamp when I go to push it in there. But to make sure that my stamp doesn't stick, I am going to dust it liberally with cornstarch. Now, it's the regular old cornstarch, like the one you have in your kitchen, but this is not my kitchen cornstarch. This is my craft room cornstarch that I'm using today. So I'm going to dust this really, really well. If your texture sticks to it, it's not like the end of the world. It'll still be fine. But I really want to get a nice clean imprint. So I am taking my time forming that little crust over the top and then making sure that I dust my stamp really well. I used my texture medium for this process, but you could absolutely take some air dry clay, right, and roll it out and glue a piece onto the top and do the exact same thing and get a similar result. Once I get my stamp all dusted, I am going to simply lay it down right over the top of the texture, and I'm going to press this super cute snowflake design right into this texture. How cute is that, right? I just love playing with texture. It is so yummy. Now I'm going to go through and just kind of clean my edges up a little bit with the same color paint that I used in my texture medium. And you guys will notice that you really can't see the texture in any kind of meaningful way unless you're looking really close. So I'm going to use just regular old stamping ink. Honestly, you guys, I found this at the thrift store. I am always shopping for craft supplies at the thrift store. You can find like entire zip bags of stamps. So make sure you check it out the next time you go thrifting. But to make sure that my details are really popping, I'm going to take this ink and I am just going to go over the high points of my details. So I'm not trying to push the color down into the recesses, and I'm not trying to get full coverage. I'm basically dry brushing with my ink so that the details pop and you can really see that really pretty stamp. Now, the little sponge that you see me using, I found this at the Dollar Tree too, you guys. It was over in the makeup section. So I figured I'd grab one and see if it would be useful, and I'm kind of liking it. How cute is that? And the brown is really nice because it pulls in the colors from the paper. And that is it. I did put some little eyelets on the top, and I just use a piece of fabric to make like a really rustic ribbon to hang these. And I think these would be super cute hanging on your front door, or even if you use them inside of a larger wreath. I think these came out so cute. Are you guys gonna try these?
Hey, Bryce here from Roycycled Treasure, your crazy creative bestie, here to empower you to find your artistic voice and create beautiful things for your heart, for your home, and even for your business. If you guys are looking for Roycycled Decoupage papers, find them at Roycycled.com and find the retailers who carry them. Roycycled Decoupage papers are 20-inch by 30-inch, perfect scale for furniture, but you can also use them for home decor and your crafting projects.
Our next project, you guys, I had to replace my back fence, and y'all know I don't throw away anything. So we took the fence posts and we used them for different projects, but I had the guys cut the tips off because to me, they looked perfect for tags, right? So I'm going to do a quick, rough white paint just over these because we're going to decoupage these too. Today is all about industrial for the rest of the day, just fair warning. So I don't need like a really perfect coverage because we're going to be using a darker paper over these anyways, but I do want to have a lighter background because even though my paper is darker, it does have some lighter details and I want those to pop. So once my paint is dry, I'm ready to decoupage. I'm going to be using the Roycycled Register decoupage for this project. This is one of my absolute favorite papers. I love this so much. I was not sure which part I wanted to use on my tags, but I love typography and so I'm going to use the numbers. But we want to make sure that the numbers are going to be the right side up, right? So after I make a final decision about how I'm going to lay my paper on, I can trim it and we can get to the fun part, which is decoupaging our tags. The fun part about this project is that the paper has a ton of visual texture. There's so much rust and, grunginess on these tags. I just love them. I love this paper so much, but these fence posts have a lot of physical texture. And so when we decoupage, we're still going to see that physical texture through the paper. And because we're misting our paper in order to be able to decoupage without wrinkles, it's really going to settle into those grooves. And so we're going to have the visual texture from the paper, and we're also going to have the physical texture from the wood that's going to show through the paper. I just love this project so much. I don't know what I'm gonna do with these tags, but I'm gonna find somewhere to put them. You guys, this little blue cup that I'm using is silicone. I can put my paint and my decoupage medium in the silicone cups. They come with lids. I love them so much, and my product lasts so long. You guys can find them in my Amazon shop. You can use the QR code here. And even if the product dries up in there, because if you leave it for like 2 months, it's gonna dry up. It's super easy. You just squish it and it pops right out. Super easy cleanup. And I am terrible with my craft supplies, so things like this are a super bonus for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and decoupage the rest of these before we move on to our next step. You see that super yummy texture? You can see that wood grain popping right out of that paper. Now, after they're dry, I'm going to go ahead and trim these. I'm using a sanding block. This one is about a 220 sanding block. You guys will notice that I'm only sanding in one direction. I'm pulling straight down and I'm focusing on the edge where the paper ends, because the edge is actually helping me to cut and to trim it. And so I get a nice clean trim just by using my sanding block. Now, these are super rustic, so it's not super important that they be trimmed perfectly, but I do think that it looks neat when you get a nice trim. I'm going over these again with my water-based varnish just to make sure that I have protection over my paper. And then to add an extra grunge factor, I'm going to go around the edges with some Annie Sloan dark wax. This is just going to bring even more details into the tags, and I'm going to run my fingers around the edge just to create that really beautiful halo. And that's it, you guys. These are almost done, but okay. So I didn't get done, but I'm going to be finishing these on one of my Sunday lives. We are live every Sunday at 5 p.m. here on YouTube and on Facebook. So be sure and join us. If you are looking for a safe place to find a community of creatives to share, to inspire, and to learn together, consider joining the Roycycled Besties membership. You can use the QR code to find out more information. Scrapwood boxes. These were so fun to make. So we generally go through my scrap wood every year, and we make a lot of projects, and so we made about a dozen of these boxes, you guys. I think these will be so fun. They can be used on your tablescape. You can put feet on them to make risers. But for this one, I am making a box to go in my living room. We use the hymnal holders from the back of some old pews to make a floating shelf in my living room. So this specific box has been made to fit perfectly on that floating shelf in my living room. So because it's my living room, you guys know it's going to be industrial. I'm using the Roycycled hardware decoupage paper for this project. We're only going to be using the bottom, and so we'll save the top for another project. Once I get everything dry fit, we can start decoupaging. I do want to make sure that my topography is centered in the middle of my box, and I've trimmed this one pretty closely. So I spritz my paper. I'm going to take the time to kind of stretch it out a little bit before I start decoupaging. And for this one, because I've trimmed it so closely, this starter row is really important because it's really going to establish the direction of the paper. When you're decoupaging on like a narrow surface like this one, it's easy to end up with your paper like facing diagonal, and then you end up going off edge and there's a piece that isn't covered. So that starter row really does help to establish the placement of your paper, including the direction, to make sure that it lays down exactly the way you want. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. I just love this paper so much, the details of the bricks, and you guys will notice that I painted this box white even though the majority of my paper is black. But because it has those white details, the white paint underneath really does help those details pop off of the black background. I was hesitant to paint the back of this box because we use such a beautiful piece of wood, but that piece of wood was huge, and we've made several projects and it's already served its purpose. So this is the last of it, and I want to use the other piece of this decoupage paper for the back side of my box so that honestly I can use either side in my living room and it'll still look good. So I'm going to follow the same steps as before, creating a starter row for my paper to make sure that it's laying down correctly. Whoops. I got to be nice to my paper so it'll stay where it's supposed to stay. And then laying it down to cover up the rest of the box. I did go ahead and trim this before it dried fully, but this is a relatively rustic project, so it's not super important that my paper be really clean on my trim. So I'm going to expect to have a lot of little tears around the edges, but it's going to be fine. I'll just cover up any white that's showing with the dark wax, and no one will ever know. I'm going to cover the ends with these white circles that are part of the paper, and I'm considering putting some kind of a transfer in that white space, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. You guys don't look at my phone that's in the way right there. I'm filming from multiple angles. I gotta make the most of every time that I'm making a project. So once I get my box all the way covered, you guys, I am almost done. I can get this trimmed, and just like we did with the tags, I'm gonna go in with my dark wax, and I am just going to kind of make my edges darker so everything looks more cohesive. And this box is finished. I don't have to worry about the inside because I'm not going to be using real plants. Plants come to my house to die, you guys. I am not good. So I'm going to use some faux succulents, and it's still going to be beautiful. And this is how it turned out. I love this so much. I'm thinking that I may put feet on here. What do you guys think? Thank you so much. You guys remember, these projects are super simple. You guys can do them, and you guys can do them today. Thank you. Have a blessed day.